Hi, this is Jeremy Jansen, and this is the October 2011 issue of Reason Wizardry. I had planned this month to talk about one of the new Reason 6 devices, Alligator, as well as Neptune, which we never got to talk enough about when it debuted with Record. Seeing as this is Reason Wizardry, not Record Wizardry, it didn't seem appropriate at the time. However, I got kind of caught up working with Alligator, and for that reason, I'm going to save the Neptune stuff for a future issue. So I hope you like this in-depth look at the Alligator triple filtered gate. With Alligator, what we've got is a device that used to be possible using the Combinator and say Thor filters all set up together, but now it's all set up in one single device, and that's pretty cool and can come in handy in many situations and is in general much quicker to work with than pulling up a large Combinator that's probably limited to the 4 rotaries and 4 buttons. So what I want to do first is go through Alligator's basic functions and show you that it's not simply a trance gate, but with just a few tweaks you can get some very different sounds. So I've got the default patch loaded here in Alligator, and I've got a pad from Pantheon 3 running into this Alligator. So let's hear what the default patch sounds like if I play a chord from Vanguard. The very first thing I want to point out with Alligator is that although it's split up into 3 different filter bands, we don't have to use those filter bands at all. We can just use the Alligator as a gating device with no filtering going on at all. And then we can get some interesting sounds by changing the decay and release times. I should also mention that for the attack time, you'll always want to use something above around 15 because under that value, there's some attack clicks that you might not like. Okay, so we don't have any filtering going on there. Let's switch to a different pattern. And now let's pan some of the bands. So by hard panning the bands without any filtering, you can very quickly get some nice gated sounds on pads. Now the flip side of that is that we don't need to use the amp envelope at all. So what we can do is just set the decay and release times to maximum. And now we'll want to turn the filter bands back on again and reset the pan controls here. So now when we play a note, we're not actually using the pattern controls for anything, but we can instead use the filter frequencies controls to change the timbre of the sound. And of course we can still pan these bands as well. We can add some subtle movement to this, still not using any of the patterns, by adding some LFO modulation to one or more of the bands. Of course, we can additionally use the pattern to drive the filter envelope for each one of the bands. Let's turn down the pattern speed and let's turn up the filter envelope modulation of the low pass. When it comes to modulating the parameters on Alligator, if we flip the rack around, you can see that there are some CV inputs here, both for triggering the bands and for setting their frequency as well as the LFO rate. But beyond that, what I really love about Alligator is that propeller heads really haven't skimped on the combinator modulation possibilities. Pretty much everything is modulatable through the combinator system. So what I'm going to do now is show you some of the initial uses that I've found for modulating Alligator parameters using the combinator. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a Thor device that we're going to use for its LFO. So we're going to take the output of LFO2 and we're going to send it to the CV1 input here on the combinator. And now we're going to go into the combinator programmer and set up a modulation. CV1 input is going to go to the filter bandpass envelope amount. And it's going to also go to the filter high pass envelope amount. And we'll kind of set them in opposition to one another. So you can see we've got the movement that we want right now. They're moving in opposition to each other. It's fairly fast though, so let's turn the LFO speed down here on our Thor. All right, let's hear what that sounds like. So this way you can just kind of add a touch of faded in envelope modulation to the filter frequency of the filter bands. I find it really nice on sustained atmospheric pads. One aspect of Reason sound design I've always found a lot of fun is combining CV modulation with combinator modulations. And we're going to do that now in order to create a morphing-like effect by changing all of the filter's frequency and resonance controls at once. So there's multiple ways to do that. I'm going to just show you one of them, the first one that comes to my mind. So to do that, we're going to set up CV1 input on the first 6 slots of this combinator programmer for the alligator. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one more. And we're going to target those to each filter's frequency and resonance. So we need 2 controls for each one of the bands. So now I've added in some values here semi-randomly for each frequency and resonance control. Hopefully that'll sound good. Now what we need to do is go down to our Thor here and take its rotary 1 and send that out CV output 1. And we'll send that into the CV1 input for the combinator at 127. So let's listen to what this morph sounds like right now. So it's a pretty nice but subtle sound. I like it. You could obviously change the frequency and resonance to your taste. So now what we're going to do is just name this control. And we're going to control it using the first combinator control as well. There. So you might ask, why didn't we just use rotary 1 on each one of these slots and just avoid using the Thor altogether? And the reason is, since we're starting in the CV realm here, what we can do is add different CVs together to come up with the modulation value that moves these controls. And I'll show you what I mean by sending an LFO signal out that's going to be added to the modulation of this morph control. So what we want is LFO2 is also being sent out CV output 1, and it's being scaled by rotary 2. So we're mixing these 2 CV signals to come up with the final modulation result. Alright, so now we can control the amount of LFO modulation that we want, in addition to moving manually the controls. So let's add this LFO rotary to the combinator. So now it's all very easily controllable from the combinator panel. Another important thing to remember about Alligator is that you don't need to use any of the inbuilt patterns to drive the device. It can be driven via CV. So to start off here, I'm going to show you driving the filter bands via CV from Redrum. So what I've done is programmed a simple sequence here on a Redrum kit. And what we're going to do is flip the rack around and send some gate outputs into the gate inputs for the Alligator device. So we'll start off by connecting up the kick gate to the low pass filter gate. And then we'll send the snare gate to the bandpass filter gate. Now for the high pass, I'd like to send the hi-hat, but we have a little bit of an issue because hi-hat is actually on channel 8 and 9. So we're going to need to combine those CV signals. Let's do that using a Spider CV merger and splitter. And we'll take the gate outs from both 8 and 9, merge them, and send them to gate 1. So now you'll be able to hear as the gate from the Redrum triggers each one of the 3 Alligator filter gates. Of course, we can silence this Redrum and just use that rhythm purely to drive the gates. For the most flexibility, designing custom Alligator patterns, it should be fairly obvious where we need to turn, and that of course is to the matrix pattern sequencers. So right now I'm going to add 3 of those. And we'll link these up via CV. Now we have a ton of flexibility designing patterns for our filter gate, because not only can we set up visually each one of the gates, but we can use different timing, as in resolution and step lengths for each one of the gates. So in this case, let's use a 30-second step pattern for the high pass gate. Why not add perhaps a little bit of drive to this as well? We haven't discussed much about this drive, but what's cool about it is that it's a different type of distortion than is available in either Pulverizer or Scream or Thor. So it's one more unique way to get a different type of distortion from Reason. Okay, now we'll do the low pass. And now we'll do a shorter 8th note pattern for the bandpass. So now we've got a really cool custom pattern. Unfortunately, we can't save that in a alligator patch, but we can save it as a combinator. So it's an interesting trade-off with the alligator triple filtered gate in that we can't create custom patterns, but it's really easy to set it up with 3 matrix devices to add whatever custom patterns we want. So you can use it just all on its own if you really want to get going quick and there's maybe some patterns in there that you know that you'll like, or you can take just a little bit more time and set up exactly what you want with some matrix pattern sequencers. Another capability I really like with Alligator is its separate outputs. So we can take our bandpass, low pass, and high pass channels and send them to different mixer channels or different effects or whatever we'd like. So right now I'm just sending these into a mixer, and then we'll see what it looks like when we play back our patterns from the last chapter. So from here we could add some send effects perhaps. Let's pull in maybe a reverb here. And maybe we could use an insert effect before one of the other bands reaches the mixer. Let's pull out a Scream 4. And we'll take the low pass band and we'll send that through the Scream 4 first and then into mixer channel 3. And for band 2, the band pass, maybe let's pull out a pulverizer. And we'll take the band pass channel, put that into the input of the pulverizer, and then send it to mixer channel 2. And we'll squash it and add a little bit of dirt. So don't forget about all the options you'll be able to take advantage of if you split up the audio outputs coming from the Alligator. Lastly, what I'd like to show you is a complete Alligator morph. And what that means is that all of the parameters are morphable. And the way that we're going to do that is to use a second Alligator. So you can see that many of the settings are fairly different on this Alligator. Some are similar. So what we're going to do first is flip the rack around, and we're going to need to send the same input signal into this new alligator device. So to do that, let's create a spider audio, merger and splitter, and we'll take this input signal and split that so that it enters both of the alligators. Now, beyond that, remember that our first alligator is being triggered by these 3 custom matrix devices. So what we can do easily without splitting that CV signal or anything else is just taking the CV output from this alligator and sending it down to the lower alligator. Done. All right, now finally what we need is a way to morph between them. And to do that, we're going to use our equal power crossfading technique. So we're going to add 2 line mixers here. Now we're going to take the output from the first alligator and split it across both line mixers. And we'll take the output from the second alligator and do the same. Perhaps you remember this technique from many previous issues. If not, it's pretty straightforward. Now we're going to need to go in and we'll use rotary 3. And we need to set up a modulation for channel 1 pan. And then on the same rotary, channel 2 pan, and make that the opposite. Now we just need to do the same on the second line mixer. Now we'll take the outputs from the line mixer and use them as a stereo pair, just like that. All right, let's hear what that sounds like. So this is our first original alligator. For some reason, I just want to hear what a pulverizer sounds like, affecting that whole signal chain. So just let me indulge and add this. I'm going to add a Thor, initialize it, and send out its LFO signal to our rotary 3 and set it to a slow speed. So now we are moving through our 2 different alligator devices controlled by a slow LFO. Let's hear what that sounds like. So I'll save this patch for you, and you can use it as a starting point for some new alligator exploration. We have reached the end of this October 2011 Reason Wizardry issue. Thanks again for watching, and until next month, I'm Jeremy Jansen. Cheers.